Are you tired of trying to commit race war to make a white supremacist state with just the usual arsenal available to Americans?
Yeah.
Then try illegal military surplus. Why take out your racist aggression with anything less? The Second Amendment says guns or something, which means it's your right, as an American, to own as many Claymore landmines and anti-tank rockets as your freedom desires.
Wow.
Defeat the United States by using its very weapons against it. Or, if that's not to your liking, you can also try illegal weapon mods and dangerous homemade explosives. Available now at www.
All right, everybody. By the 1980s, the white power movement had... Hey, Phoebes. By the 1980s, the white power movement had grown into a much larger, more militant movement. The divisions between the Klan and neo-Nazis had broken down, and they had moved together into this white power movement that was hell-bent on essentially tearing down the United States and building a white supremacist ethno-state. Various different, philosophies on how to do this, but a lot of them were starting to gravitate towards the Pacific Northwest. The United States government wasn't really piecing together that this was a coordinated, if leaderless, movement. Therefore, they were able to grow and coordinate and collaborate and share resources pretty much unheeded. But anyways, if you're trying to start a war to take down the US military, you're going to need weapons. And in America, it's very easy to get very deadly weapons, as, recent history has shown. But to fight the United States military, you're going to need something a little bit more hardcore than even an AR-15. So, how did the white power movement get its hands on weapons of war? And they did get their hands on weapons of war. Well, there's essentially two ways they did it. They either made them themselves, or they nicked them from the US military. And that's the subject of the video we're going to talk about today, how the white power movement got its hands on weapons of war. But before we start, you know who won't train you to wage race war against the US government, but will teach you SQL? SkillShare. I'm sorry, SkillShare. SkillShare is a learning community where millions come together to learn about illustration, design, video, freelancing, and more. And yes, in order to make the vibe fit, I did check, and SkillShare does not have any classes on paramilitary training. Last I checked. Who knows what the future has in store. SkillShare costs less than $10 a month, and they have courses on tons of things that can help you boost your career. One of the courses I recently enjoyed was on comedy filmmaking when you have a low budget, which, given the commercial I just did, is a course I probably very obviously need. But there's a great deal if you want to check out Skillshare, and that is the first 1,000 people who click the link that's down in the description, or it's the top pinned comment. You'll get a free trial of the Skillshare premium service. You get to give it a shot before you commit real money to it. And I do think that if you try it, you'll like it and you'll stick around. I also want to thank Skillshare for giving this video a sponsorship, because this video is demonetized to hell and back. Hi, I'm Tristan. This is Step Back History. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification to not miss another Step Back video. Let's give a quick recap of the situation involving the white supremacist movement in the early 1980s. The Ku Klux Klan and the neo-Nazi movements both grabbed onto a new common narrative that propelled angry white people into their dark embrace. It was the Vietnam story of a country that failed the people and was going to win until the communists or Jews or whatever betrayed them. The Vietnam veteran came home betrayed by their people. It isn't true, but in the wake of waves of social change in the US for women and people of color, truth meant very little to reactionaries. Furthermore, veterans came home and joined these movements with their military training. A series of attacks on Vietnamese refugees and Maoists led the Nazis and the Klan, usually in conflict, to come together and make an alliance against, everyone who is not them. Mix in a justice system and police force that refuses to counter their actions and lets them get away with murder, and you have a movement on the roll. Their plan? prepared to declare war on the United States through leaderless resistance cells and eventually create a white supremacist homeland. This came with idealized images of genocide and mass executions. Just about all the things you can think of on the wish list of Klansmen and neo-Nazis. But to commit war against the state, you need weapons. Even though America lets you have some pretty deadly armaments, it's not going to destroy tanks or, I don't know, stealth bombers or something. So they were going to need beefier weapons as well as bombs and the like. Not to mention they'd need computers for communication and, money for these things, plus food and land and stuff. So what do? You either learn to make weapons yourself or buy them off the US military. And that part was easy because, as it turns out, many white power folks also happen to be active duty officers. Today, we're going to talk about two groups: the Carolina Knights of the Ku Klux Klan and the Covenant, Sword, and the Arm of the Lord. Oh my God, these people are dorks. They both armed using two different methods and typified how the movement quietly built an arsenal for race war across the United States. Let's begin with the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord. While it sounds like some kind of paladin order from the Forgotten Realms, it was actually a dangerous terrorist organization hell-bent on white supremacist race war. It was led by a man who declared himself the King of the Ozarks, James Ellison. Oh God, I just can't. This is the problem with fascists. They're a serious threat to democracy and dangerous monsters and are some of the worst dorks imaginable. The CSA practiced a form of white supremacist anti-Semitic Christianity called Christian identity. I've long had on my list of videos to do someday a video on this sect, so yell at me until I do, I guess. 70 to 90 people in the CSA lived on a compound in Arkansas, living an almost pre-industrial lifestyle. Their homes had wood stoves and were lit with old-school kerosene lamps. But behind closed doors, their operation was anything but low-tech. The group began to militarize in 1979 and did so with their own hands. Here, they manufactured illegal weapons and gun modifications. They built silencers and converted rifles from semi-automatic to fully automatic, which is when you can just hold down the trigger and the bullets keep shooting. You don't have to fire every round. It's highly legal, almost as illegal as their homemade, grass-fed, free-range claymore mines and hand grenades. The group also wore camouflage to show off their militarization and steal a little bit of that valor. Somehow, they also got their hands on other munitions that the Second Amendment doesn't cover yet. These are things most reasonable people would want to keep out of the hands of civilians, like C4 plastic explosive and anti-tank light rockets.
It is my right as an American citizen to have light anti-tank rockets.
The compound was also a place of paramilitary training for other groups. While the police never grasped it, all these white power groups were not lone wolves, but a coordinated, leaderless resistance. I know you're getting very tired of me saying that over and over. They aided each other in many ways, big and small, from weapons to babysitting. The CSA compound became one of the major training camps and was a great asset to the white power movement. So much so, the Northwest Nazi group The Order gave them some of their cash from a string of robberies and counterfeit operations to buy some more land. The group continued to grow and prepare for violence. Soon after their expansion, the CSA firebombed a synagogue and a gay community church and blew up a gas pipeline in an attempted act of terrorism against the city of Chicago. The group only came to an end when in 1984, a CSA member murdered a black state trooper at a traffic stop. The investigation led to an arrest where the perpetrator was found with hand grenades, machine gun pistols, and illegal silencers. Furthermore, he had CSA and Christian identity literature on him. He even had a copy of Essays of a Klansman, a book by Vietnam vet turned white power leader Louis Beam. It's a view into how leaderless movements coordinate. They read the same literature and therefore appropriate the same ideas, tactics, and targets. The arrest led to a 4-day siege of the CSA compound where 300 federal and state troops invaded. They found bomb factories, armories, hidden fugitives from the order, and 30 gallons of sodium cyanide, enough to kill 400,000 people. To further show the connection between the white power movement and the greater racist mercenary world, they found $40,000 in gold Krugerrand coins, a currency from apartheid South Africa. Despite these connections, the police didn't think it was a larger coordinated movement. Now, making your own munitions is well and fine if you're into that millennial cottagecore aesthetic, but suppose you're prepping for a race war for reasons other than the gram. In that case, you can just get your death machine store-bought from all those people sympathetic to your cause who are active soldiers. For that, we'll need to talk about the Carolina Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. The CKKKK, that's going to be a fun one to say a bunch, founded in 1980 to capitalize on the momentum gained after several Klansmen more or less got away with murder in the city of Greensboro the previous year. I made a video about the Greensboro massacre in this video here. The founder of the CKKKK was a 20-year veteran, former paratrooper, and Green Beret Glenn Miller. After 2 tours in Vietnam, the military discharged him for distributing racist literature. After getting banned from Murder Twitter, he then started Murder Parler, or the CKKK, in 1980. The goal was to make a neo-Nazi unified state of Carolina, a white supremacist fusion of the 2 southern states, or unify the South into a white utopia. So, as anyone starting a race war would do, the guy needed to prepare. Miller joined the neo-Nazi group The Order in 1984, essentially plugging the CKKK into the broad white power movement. This came with a name change to the Confederate Knights of the Ku Klux Klan to try and grow beyond the Carolinas, and eventually to a more significant rebrand, and luckily an easier one to say, the White Patriot Party, to be less offensive to outsiders. Because I think we've learned from the whites in the last year or two that being called racist is much more offensive to us than, the actual racist ideas. Like many of these groups, they also like to latch on to the Vietnam narrative as part of their identity. The group also wore camo and armed themselves with the weapons of the Vietnam War, because they kept getting weapons from the actual military, because I can't emphasize enough how many active duty officers were members of this group. The military aesthetic appealed to active soldiers and veterans and people who wanted to LARP as veterans. They even had their own adorable little special ops program with training and loyalty. You could get to wear this cute little beret. The group actively worked to recruit personnel stationed at nearby Fort Bragg, a major U.S. military base in North Carolina. The military recently made it against the rules to be an open white supremacist. This attack on their frozen peaches could obviously not be tolerated. The military, to enforce this rule, seemingly was just completely unable to stop finding an absolute tidal wave of hate literature coming from Marines on the base. Numbers are sketchy, but it's estimated that the WPP possibly had as many as 5,000 members. The recruitment drive included distributing copies of the white supremacist newsletter Thunderbolt. In each copy, they placed a special insert giving a phone number you could call to hear racist rants and information about local WPP events. A phone number that at its peak received about 500 calls a month. The WPP stocked up on the essentials: AR-15s, the mass shooter's weapon du choix, and 12-gauge automatic weapons. They also did arts and crafts days and played with the making of Molotov cocktails. The active duty soldiers helped the WPP field an extensive military training program. The U.S. military personnel taught these folks how to defeat the U.S. military. They literally gave courses on how to use the illegal—
I'm sorry, I can't divulge information about that customer's secret illegal account. Oh, crap.
Stolen weapons, as well as guerrilla fighting mission drills and artillery simulations. Oh boy. With these resources, the WPP set out to do a bit of terrorism by doing armed patrols of local schools to inflame fake threats of chaos due to school integration. The WPP feared a racial jungle in much the same way the literal, right now, not even a joke, US president is on the record as saying. In an intimidation tactic, they'd also do an old Southern classic of armed poll watching, an activity advocated by the previous literal, not even a joke, actual US president. There, I did them both. This is an intimidation tactic to stop black people from voting, which is as old as time. Upon joining the order, the WPP also got stimmy checks to the tune of $150,000 to $300,000 from their Northwest Nazi allies. According to Glenn Miller's own account, this cash went to buying land, vehicles, payroll, uniforms, flags, telephone lines, and literature. However, investigations have found that at least $50,000 went to weapons bought stolen from Fort Bragg with either cash or drugs. This included light anti-tank rockets, anti-personnel landmines, 200 pounds of C4 explosive. Just want to let you know that 1 pound of C4 is enough to take down a building, M16 ammo, gas masks, and they even tried to buy surface-to-air missiles. Silly racists. Stinger missiles are for bin Laden and his friends. The WPP sure seemed to be gearing up for something. In 1985, the military decided to look into why tens of millions of dollars of weapons appeared in the black market. They quickly found this stream of weapons flowing into the White Patriot Party. The FBI warned them about this, but the military chose not to act. It wasn't until the WPP threatened a black prison guard named Bobby Person that anything really happened. After burning a cross on his lawn and holding his children at gunpoint, the Southern Poverty Law Center launched a suit against them. For it, the SPLC began a 3-year investigation into Glenn Miller's operation. To get them to drop the suit, Miller promised to stop paramilitary activity in a consent decree. Still, from day one, the SPLC suspected he was breaking it. They called attention to the paramilitary training camps and illegal weapons. Still, Miller claimed that this was merely a self-defense class against what they thought was an imminent communist revolution. The renewed investigation led to a new case where literature, again linking the WPP to criminal neo-Nazi group The Order and a greater white power movement, surfaced. Miller was ordered to never associate with the WPP or any white power org again and was sentenced to 6 months in jail for breaking the consent decree. The trial was bonkers. During it, the WPP showed how innocent they were by bringing the Greensboro massacre shooters to testify on their behalf and ordered a hit on Morris Dees, the founder of the SPLC. Safe to say, the WPP soon disbanded, but the story's not over there. Finally, in 1987, the FBI and ATF investigated the arms dealing of the WPP and indicted 5 members on conspiring to steal U.S. military weapons and planning robberies to fund it. They also launched a probe into active servicemen to find 134 active members engaged in weapons dealing. Many of the former WPP members joined a group called the National Socialist Liberation Front, connected to white power icons like David Duke and Tom Metzger. And Glenn Miller ran for Senate. Once the probe came to his attention, Miller went underground to, quote, wage war against the Jews and the federal government. He wrote and widely distributed a declaration of war stating that he'd call for a big race war if the U.S. didn't overturn his conviction, let his people wear uniforms, and give him $888,000. Some orgs started preparing for his command. So this actually could have gotten real bad. The declaration set off a manhunt for Miller, where he was quickly found hiding in a trailer in Ozark, Missouri. The siege was short, and Miller, with a few associates, surrendered. They found in the trailer AR-15s and M16s, modified for fully automatic firing, C4, grenades, pipe bombs, detonator cords, switches, thousands of rounds of ammo, and $13,000 in cash. And Miller took a plea bargain. He testified against his friends and gave information on the entire white power movement. He then only got a 5-year sentence. This made him so hated by the white power movement, he had to be put in witness relocation. Each of its associates also only got 5-year sentences. I just want to give a little bit of an addendum to this story. In April of 2014, Glenn Miller was arrested in connection with the Overland Park Jewish Community Center shooting in Overland Park, Kansas. In 2015, he was convicted of capital murder and is currently on death row. And so despite that, despite all of this, the government still never came to a conclusion that this was all part of a larger coordinated effort. There would eventually be a larger investigation into the white power movement, but it wouldn't happen until things got a lot worse. And yes, it does seem that the security forces at B are a little bit more interested in the white nationalist terrorist organizations recently because of the January 6th insurrection that happened. But the state doesn't have a great track record of staying honest and sticking to these people. They probably have an anarchist book fair they need to make sure is broken up or something. But this is a serious threat. It was in the 80s. It is now. And if we don't put concerted attention towards it, the state is going to sweep it back under the rug. So, don't let that happen because we'll have to stay vigilant. Trump is gone, but him coming to power did bring this movement back from the dead, and it didn't go down when he left office. Anyways, if you want more nightmare fuel about this topic, I have done a whole series on the white power movement. There's a few more episodes to go. Definitely worth checking out. So yeah, enjoy that.